We're going to go ahead and get started. And as long as everybody can hear me, I feel like I don't even necessarily need a mic with this crowd, but we are in a gymnasium and the sound is a little tricky sometimes in this space. But thank you all for coming, very much appreciate it. We're going to probably get this done in about a half hour, and then we're going to have a chance for a Q&A afterwards. So by all means, keep track of your questions as we go through the slides. And then Miss Joyce from Myron is going to come around with a portable mic after the presentation and give people a chance to answer questions in more of a discussion style town hall format. Quick introductions starting from the end. Travis Hongestow, architect from IDI. Isaac Roberts, engineer from GEI. And then we have Trevor Papour, right? Okay. Who's here from Myron. And Bridget Joyce, who's also from Myron. Jim Lampman is our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, and my name is Zach Sedgwick, and I have the privilege of being the superintendent at Marquette Area Public Schools. So whenever I do these presentations, I like to ground the presentation in some of the research that we've done prior to coming to the voters with this proposal. And just for some context, I came in, as did Mr. Lampman, during COVID, right in the heat of COVID. And as you can imagine, that was an interesting time to be an educator. It really caused us to revisit some of the fundamental principles with respect to keeping students safe in a school environment. And you're going to see that theme throughout this presentation. We always try to start with our mission statement. That is the focus of all of what we do. Our mission statement is to maximize the academic potential of every child. That is, of course, in light of a lot of different moving parts in a district our size. We have 6 different strategic planning groups all working towards that goal of maximizing the academic potential of every child. And today's focus, of course, is on that facilities and learning environment. That is a key component of any strategic plan in a district our size. Our district has over 750,000 square feet of buildings. We have 7 buildings that house students. We have 4 elementaries. We have this is our only middle school, and we have 2 high schools. 7 buildings, over 750,000 square feet of buildings. Our average building age is 60 years old. Our quote unquote newest buildings are 30 years old. Many of our systems in those buildings are outdated. The bones of the buildings are solid. If you went on the tour a little bit earlier, you'll see that structurally we're in good shape, but it's the systems within those buildings that are the problem. If you own a home and it's been over 30 years since you updated that home, you can imagine that many of your systems are outdated. The HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, the electrical systems, the plumbing, the furnishings, the finishings. That's the same challenge we have here. I like to always use, mnemonic devices to help me remember the different components of this presentation. 3 main pillars of this plan: safety, infrastructure, and programming. I'm sure I don't need to tell the audience the importance of safety in this day and age in public education. Safety has been our focus, has been our primary focus for quite some time. We've invested millions of dollars into improving our safety at Marquette Area Public Schools, and it's a focal point for this bond proposal as well. Infrastructure, I mentioned all the systems that are within those buildings: HVAC systems, electrical systems, plumbing systems, etc. And then, of course, programming, academics, the arts, athletics. All of those different pillars, or all of those different components, are being touched in this plan. One of our taglines is every building, every student. When you look at the information that we've been disseminating, including the fact sheet that hit mailboxes just the last couple days, every building, every student is impacted by this proposal. We've really done our best to address a significant amount of need with a somewhat reasonable ask. Some of the philosophical underpinnings of this particular proposal. I mentioned that I came in during COVID. We realized that safety and well-being was going to be a primary focus. COVID really emphasized that particular focal point. On the left, you see a graphic for MTSS, Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. It's a comprehensive, data-driven research-based initiative that we've used to drive all of our school improvement, including our strategic plan that I just mentioned before, and help us ultimately achieve our mission of maximizing the academic potential of every child. No easy task during COVID when students were isolated many times at home, forced to separate or forced to keep distance, forced to miss much of the programming, much of the fundamental learning that was required for them to be successful to ultimately reach that academic potential that we keep talking about. And then on the right, for anybody that's been in education, you'll be familiar with Maslow, psychologist from the 40s, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Self-actualization, the top of the pyramid, much like the maximizing the academic potential of every child. That's our goal, but Maslow told us you're never going to get kids to that ultimate goal of reaching their potential, their academic potential, if their basic needs aren't being met. You start at the bottom of the triangle, you talk about physiological needs. When you think about infrastructure, safe, warm, and dry, just to give you an example, clean drinking water, healthy food. They're never going to be successful. They're never going to learn effectively if those basic needs aren't being met. You move up Maslow's triangle, you move right to safety and security. Again, one of the main focal points of this presentation of our strategic plan and, of course, our mission here at Marquette Area Public Schools. Quick timeline on how we got here. We've been working on this since I took over. Again, this is my fifth year as superintendent at Marquette Area Public Schools. It was quickly apparent when we took over, and I say we because it was more than myself. Many of the folks that you see up here on the panel were part of the team that started looking at our infrastructure. It was clearly apparent infrastructure was going to be a need or a focus for us moving forward. We just had to address more immediate needs at the time. Anyway, starting when we took over 2022 in May of 2022, moving on into 2023, we started assembling a team of architects and engineers, some of which that you see here with us tonight, to bring additional expertise that we didn't necessarily have internally. In May of 2025, the state of Michigan released a statewide infrastructure study, told public schools throughout Michigan they had $23 billion worth of critical infrastructure needs, told Marquette Area Public Schools we had over $100 million worth of critical infrastructure needs. I used that as a launching pad into basically making this work that we had been doing behind the scenes more public. But that work began years ago. This proposal that you're going to see on May 5th has literally been years in the making. People that I work with are tired of hearing me talk about infrastructure because I've been talking about it so much since I took over. After receiving the infrastructure study, we really launched our more public campaign. In September, we actually sent surveys to all of our constituents, all of our MAPS voters, and asked them, what do you want? What are you willing to support? There was actually 6 different options on that survey. We had a base plan, priority 1 projects, that was $60 million. That's pretty much what you're seeing on the proposal. And then we had a $70 million, $80 million, $90 million option. And then there was 2 additional options with some one-off projects, an early childhood program, and an indoor practice facility. The survey, which we'll talk a little bit more here in a second, made it clear that that $60 million base plan, if you will, priority 1 plan was going to be the most desirable for our community. Once we had an idea of how much money we were going to be working with, namely $60 million, we began creating the scope. That's a list of projects that you've seen already, I'm sure, in some of the media and some of the print that we've sent out. That scope we then brought to the Michigan Treasury, and I'm going to blend some of the dates in this timeline. We went to the Michigan Treasury. That gets us a better interest rate, a more secure loan. That's going to help us save interest over the course of time. Went to the Michigan Treasury, brought that to the board in December, and away we went. Michigan Treasury approved that PQ application in January of this year. The board unanimously approved putting the ballot on the May 5th, or putting the proposal on the May 5th ballot. And then that's just a matter of getting the word out, which we've been doing ever since, including the meetings tonight here at Bothell Middle School and tomorrow night at Marquette Senior High School. Here's just some images that reflect the 3 pillars I mentioned. I told you that we've invested millions of dollars in safety, more secure entrances to control the traffic, of the movement of people in and out of our buildings, obviously important. PA systems, radios, different ways of communicating. If you've ever been in a public school environment, especially during an emergency, you would quickly attest that communication is paramount. Not being able to communicate in an emergency creates a huge logistical challenge for being able to keep kids safe. Infrastructure, just some examples of what we're touching or what we've touched already with the investments or the money that we've had. I want to give a quick shout out to our community for supporting a sinking fund. Our sinking fund brings in about $1.3 million a year. It's a little under 1 mil. That's great for ongoing maintenance of our infrastructure. Again, over 750,000 square feet of aging infrastructure, but it's not enough to keep up with the large scale initiative like we're talking about tonight. But you can see in the infrastructure slide some pictures of some of the systems that we have already updated with the money that we have. Just to give you some context, that parking lot, the first picture to the right of infrastructure, that parking lot was about $2 million, well over 1 year worth of sinking fund dollars just for one parking lot at Marquette Senior High School. You may have heard about the science labs at the high school that were recently updated. Those science labs, which are featured in the bottom row under programming, those science labs were $1.3 million, approximately 1 year worth of sinking fund. So that sinking fund is covering a very small portion of the scope. But anyway, safety, infrastructure, programming, I already mentioned academics, the arts, athletics, Kaufman Auditorium you see there, some of the athletics facilities that we've upgraded over the years. All of these spaces are in need of improvement. A little more on safety. We do district-wide drills. We have more secure entrances. We've replaced exterior doors, our PA systems and cameras helping emergencies, radio systems for communication, and critical incident maps. We have a whole cybersecurity campaign that we're implementing to try to make sure that not only our kids are safe, but the information about our kids is protected. 96% of our community feels that Marquette Area Public Schools is safe. That was a really important metric that I wanted to highlight in this presentation. Sinking fund, $1.3 million a year. I'm really trying to drive home this point with some graphics. Great, very much appreciated, but not sufficient because currently we're spending about $3 million a year on infrastructure. The additional money that we're putting towards infrastructure, sometimes through grants, sometimes through capital projects, money that we put aside specifically for facilities, and then sometimes through our general fund. It's not sustainable to invest $3 million a year in expense when you have $1.3 million a year of revenue. Well, the $3 million a year that we're investing currently from all those different sources, again, important, but once again, not going to keep up with the large scale need that we've identified. Over $100 million district-wide. The statewide infrastructure study. Thank you, politicians, decision makers, legislators, for telling us that we had over $100 million worth of need, and telling public schools throughout Michigan they had $23 billion worth of need. Part of my campaign as of late is revisiting that topic with our legislators and asking them, well, now what? What are we supposed to do? Michigan, again, one of 12 states that does not provide funding for infrastructure. One of 12. What are we supposed to do about our aging facilities? At this point, my only option is to go to you, to our voters, to our taxpayers, to our community. The state of Michigan also told us how much it was going to take to replace our infrastructure. That was close to $350 million. We didn't think that was going to fly. So, much like recommended by the state, we decided to go with repairing rather than replacing. Partnerships with our architects and engineers. This slide just reflects some of the work that went into that analysis. Some of those folks, Travis and Isaac in particular, have been on the team for quite a long time now, years now, of regular meetings that we do internally. We've walked our facilities many times. The internal analysis that we did really was exactly what led to that $60 million plan. If you look under priority A here, that 61, roughly 61 and some change, million plan came from that analysis. So we were prepared to offer that option as part of our survey, and we were also prepared to execute were the voters to approve. We are prepared to execute were the voters to approve because we've been doing so much work for the last few years or more. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the survey. Moving left to right, let's just focus on who's in support. 89% of our staff, wonderful. 69% of our parents, also very strong. But then only 51% of our non-parents and our non-staff. So that's our challenging demographic. Folks that don't necessarily have kids in the system, they don't work for the system, maybe they're not from Marquette, they didn't go to school here. That's our toughest demographic. And I will say the folks that are 65 and older, most likely to vote and most likely to vote no based on the survey results, also a key constituent group for this particular proposal and for this information campaign that we're undergoing now. We did work with a third party when administering that survey, School Perceptions. They work with districts throughout the country, particularly in the Midwest. Thousands or more, or 1,000 or more districts that they've worked with. They have unique expertise when it comes to analyzing the results of that survey, boiling it down to some good talking points or to easy to understand talking points, and that's what I want to talk about next. What is the likelihood of success of this particular ballot initiative? Well, we had over 1,900 survey respondents. That's over 6 times what we needed for statistical significance. That's great. 13% response rate, that's pretty strong. 69% of our community overall, of those that responded, were supportive of the $60 million Priority 1 plan. That's also very strong. When we took into account the 65 and older, most likely to vote no, we used a weighted average, a formula, and our third-party partners from School Perceptions estimated that we're about 53.8% chance of success. That's including a margin of error at about 2%. If the margin of error is in our favor, we could be up over 55%. If it's not, we're getting down into 51.8% or so, getting a little too close for comfort as far as the probability of success. 72% of our community, by the way, felt that MAPS is delivering a high-quality education, another strong statistic. This is a powerful slide. It's got a missing piece. I always want to try to get people to look at that missing part of the graph. It's right above Marquette. No coincidence. You look at the mill rate comparison for public schools in our area. If you were to imagine a red line right above where Negaunee is, about 4.5 mills, that's where the state average is. Marquette Area Public Schools, 1.31. This is the crux of the matter for our presentation tonight. We've been fiscally conservative over the years, levying far less than many of our neighbors in the state average, but in light of our aging infrastructure, that's how we got into the situation that we're in. That mill rate comparison is usually one of the most powerful slides, so I usually try to give people a little time to process that particular information, or that specific information. That does come from a sinking fund that's a little under 1 mil, and a small bond from 2016 that was about 0.38 mils. Don't need to be redundant, safety infrastructure program, $59.995 million ask, a 1.55 mil increase. By the way, that 1.55 mil increase added to the 1.31 that we currently levy is about 2.86 total. 2.86 total mills that Marquette would levy were this to be approved by our voters, still less than many of our neighbors and the state average. We did try to quote unquote sharpen the pencil when it came to this proposal. Not only did we get the ask under $60 million, we also phased our borrowing with one of our partners, PFM. They helped us phase the borrowing. There's two $14 million phases, two phases, each 14 years, total of 28 years for the proposal, for the term of the loan. That allowed us to get the interest rate down, or the amount of interest we would pay over the course of the loan lower, and it also gives us a chance to refinance, if you will, after 10 years, and that's going to be important because $60 million will be great if approved, but it's still not going to take care of over $100 million of needs. So theoretically, in 10 years, either myself or somebody else could go back with a no mill increase, some scenario such as a no mill increase, and recapture perhaps some principal to address the unmet need that we would still realize. Every building, every student impacted, as I mentioned before. A little breakdown of how this is going to be disseminated, what type of investment we're going to make into each building. You're at Bothwell Middle School, no coincidence tonight, because it is the building that will receive the most investment. This building from the 70s has some unique layouts, some unique concepts, and some very aged systems inside. It's also the building I've probably heard the most about since I've taken over as superintendent, and many of you in the audience have probably heard about Bothwell Middle School as well. Some different areas that are being impacted by this proposal. First, in order to address the large-scale improvements that we're discussing, we are actually going to put a small addition on Bothwell Middle School, actually right out the doors nearest the gym here. An addition allows us to move students into that space while we complete a major renovation of the second floor. The second floor of Bothwell is one that we all, I think, can attest, especially those of you that went on a tour, in great need of improvement. And it's everything. It's bathrooms, it's hallways, it's electrical systems, it's the layout of the rooms. Noise travels between rooms, so do humans, with in a very inefficient manner. ADA improvements, you're going to see this theme throughout our different buildings. ADA improvements obviously more prevalent in Bothwell, Marquette Senior High School, and our older buildings such as Graveret, Sandy Knoll, and the alternative school at Vandenboom. Not so much with Superior Hills and Cherry Creek. They were built in the early 90s, 30 years or so they're more compliant, or at least more up to date when it comes to ADA. PA system improvements at Bothwell Middle School, and you're going to see this again at Sandy Knoll, not at Sandy Knoll, at Graveret Elementary School. We've taken care of PA systems in all but those two buildings. The rest I don't need to read to you, but window facade improvements, especially with that addition and renovation of the second floor. CTE spaces, career and technical education, is a focus at Bothwell Middle School and Marquette Senior High School. I think you probably can understand the importance of CTE, creating future-ready learning spaces, workforce development, or workforce readiness for our students, and the talent pipeline for our community, trying to give the students the skills that they need to hopefully stay in Marquette and live here and thrive here. Athletics is a theme here at Bothwell Middle School. If you got a chance to see our lockers here at Bothwell Middle School, you have seen just how rough they are. Marquette Senior High School, you just have a similar experience where you go into those locker rooms. Music at Bothwell and the high school, band and orchestra and choral. LED lighting you're going to see throughout all of our buildings, even our newest buildings, and then technology as well. 21st century learning and the prevalence of technology, probably no surprise to you, is a need that we have at Marquette area public schools. After Bothwell Middle School, Bothwell gets about 40% of the investment. Marquette Senior High School at 29%. Press box is literally dilapidated. Natatorium is really the same as your pool. The pool is a significant cost for our district, a facility that we're invested in, that we are proud of, and we prioritize, but very expensive. I mentioned ADA improvements. Our cafeteria and media center need to be updated. Classroom furniture, again, throughout the district. I mentioned CTE, athletics, music rooms, LED, and technology, much like Bothwell. Tried to capture the other buildings in one slide, just to try to save a little bit on time. Graveret Elementary School at about 11%. That building was built in the 20s. A lot of outdated systems, although that building has been updated. Kaufman Auditorium is certainly included in the proposal. A meeting room at the alternative school. Classroom furniture throughout. I already mentioned Kaufman technology throughout, exterior doors in some of our buildings, art room improvement, that's for Sandy Knoll, heating and ventilation for multiple buildings, including Sandy Knoll and the alternative school, ADA improvements throughout, classroom renovations throughout, playground in all the buildings but Superior Hills. Superior Hills is excluded for playground improvements because they have a parent group that was able to raise significant money to improve their playground aside from this proposal. But the other 3 elementary playgrounds in need of some additional investment, and then LED lighting, which would of course improve our operational efficiency. The cost of electricity at Marquette Area Public Schools is significant, and we think that improving that electrical infrastructure will help us with our operation. If you received one of the cards at the table, or you got one in the mail, on the back of that card is a very nice synopsis overview of the different projects that are being addressed through this proposal. All the buildings are listed on the left, along with some one-offs like athletics and the bus garage. On the top, you see the 3 pillars I mentioned: safety, infrastructure, and programming. And then you can go throughout the chart there and look and see what particular areas in each specific building are being targeted. A little bit about the cost. 1.55 mil increase, as I mentioned. What will that cost? Don't need to get into mils, but it's essentially 1,000th of your taxable value. Okay, so when you look at the 1.55 mil, you're going to multiply that by your taxable value, divide by 1,000. That's how much it's going to cost you. Your taxable value is about half of your property value. So if you have a $100,000 house, you would divide that by 2. That would be your taxable value of $50,000. You divide that by 1,000 and multiply by 1.55, and you're going to have a tax impact of about $77.50. That's for a property value of $100,000 and a taxable value of half. And then you could essentially multiply $77.50 by however many times your house is worth compared to $100,000. A little bit more on the tax impact. That $77.50 a year divided by 12 gives you $6.45 a month. And if you were to divide it by 365, you'll get 21 cents a day. Just a quick summary as I wrap things up. Community-driven solution. I mentioned the survey that we sent out to over 17,000 homes. We just sent out another mailer with a fact sheet that gives you some of the key takeaways or key points that I've made in this presentation. We asked and we listened. A 1.55 mil increase gets us just under $60 million of revenue to address the aging infrastructure, the 3 pillars: safety, infrastructure, and programming. Fiscal responsibility, when you saw that mill comparison, I think you could see that we levy very little compared to many of our neighbors and the state as a whole. Operational efficiency with systems like electrical and HVAC. Obviously, we're going to spend less on utilities, and workplace readiness, focus on areas such as career and technical education, arts, academics, and athletics. Vote is, of course, or the election is on May 5th, 2026. Please mark your calendar. Every building, every student is impacted, which we made a conscious effort to address in this proposal. For more information, you can scan the QR code, which appears throughout the print that you're seeing in front of you. And I very much appreciate the support of our community for those of you that came here tonight. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and ask Miss Joyce to step up or step out with her mic. I'm actually going to take a seat and perhaps let some of my colleagues and partners here help answer some of your maybe more specific questions that you have after hearing my presentation. Okay? We'll try to keep this maybe to certainly less than 20 minutes, I think, in order to be respectful of your time. But if you have any questions, if you could just raise your hand, Miss Joyce will come to you and you can ask your question. I will take that as if it was a comprehensive presentation and you have no questions, no stone left unturned, right? Any questions? Yes?
I think I read it right. So this increase is only for the life of the debt, the 28 years, or is it permanent?
The increase would be permanent at 1.55 mils. I've never heard of anybody decreasing the amount that they levy. I guess you would have, technically, we would go back after 28 years. Jim, you want to handle that one?
Yes, this bill would be specific for this bond levy. So it would be over the life of the bond. So if the voters approve Our plan on the May election, we would then sell a bond. That bond, kind of like other debt, would have specific terms, interest rate, number of years that that bond is going to be amortized over. So there would be a, principal, interest, and an end to that debt. So this levy is specific to paying back that bond. If we, in the future, wanted to go back, say, as Mr. Sedgwick pointed out in his presentation, if we wanted to do something additional in the future, because as he pointed out, we have $100 million worth of need and we're only currently addressing 60 million of that, we would have to go back to the voters in order to do any additional projects. So the 1.55 does have an end to it. We would have to go back to the voters if we wanted that extended as this bond was being paid down.
Other questions? Well, I sure appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Go to www.napsnet.org for much more information. We have a 2026 bond tab on our homepage where you can get information specific to this election on May 5th. There's also a facility planning page or tab where you can go and you can actually see the infrastructure studies that I mentioned. You can see some of that work that went on behind the scenes that led us to this particular proposal. So thank you so much. I appreciate the community support. Have a great night.